Hi, I'm presenting a workshop, and I'd like to cover it here, some of the topics and the ideas that are percolating. I think this applies to the new year. So many of us have, new intentions or goals, and I'm thinking about all of the emotions that end up driving ultimately success. If it's a skill, the skill development isn't just about perfecting a technique. It's a journey, and it's deeply, deeply tied to our emotions. So, what if we could alchemize even the emotions that we don't prefer and use them to our advantage and use them as stepping stones towards success through this idea of emotional intelligence? So, Daniel Goleman coined the term. There's a book I think in the 1990s that he wrote named Emotional Intelligence. And he has a mixed model that's something that I've been referring to. And it's using this model as a framework to recognize and understand, manage our emotions as we relate to others, relate to ourselves, and how it applies to any skill development. It's sticking with the plan. So this mixed model includes self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skill sets, and there's strengths and we would say even weaknesses or areas that we can grow and develop in all of those aspects, definitely. I'd like to look at ocean. It's a personality trait model, and we cover with O, openness, C, conscientiousness, so definitely relating to others, folks that are extroverts. Maybe you define yourself as an introvert or somewhere on a sliding scale in between. There's an idea around agreeableness. So we hear things like teamwork and how well we work with others. Or maybe we are really agreeable and we don't take care of our own emotions. And then neuroticism. So, around this experience of anxiety on a sliding scale in learning something new, we often all can relate to feelings of fear on some level, especially in the beginning of learning something new. So, speaking of stages in development, so we might find out we're accepted to a university and we're so excited. And then we're beginning the process of learning, right? And there's tied within all of those stages common emotions that many of us can relate to. So the beginning is so much excitement, and it's often tied with anxiety at some level because everything is new. And so, how can we harness emotions like that so that they don't become overwhelming as something to observe and identify it when it's happening? Because it can quickly burn us out if it starts to just become more than we can manage. We have seasoned energy. So let's say there's a skill that we've become a lot more comfortable with, we've practiced a few times, and then, our nervous system might feel a little bit more calm. So, what are some of the pitfalls that can occur in that kind of a stage? Things might start to feel more boring, even. We might start to feel less inspired. We might kind of forget that initial excitement and that initial energy that sparked us onto the path in the first place. Is that something that could cause us to decide, this isn't for me? Especially, and I identify with myself, I love to start new projects. So, in the case of wanting to start a new project, this is the stage where I start to feel bored and I want that extra excitement back. But what if we recognize that and realized that we're on a path and this is really normal if our goal is, let's say, skill mastery? So those are the types of energies I'm looking at in all of the stages. And something that I love to focus on is the idea around vulnerability. especially in the beginning stages when you feel new and you're receiving, feedback and types of criticism. Maybe we have a really loud inner critic, and that's really quickly a way to only hear the negative, and that can drown out the positive. And so when we recognize that, we can start to realize that this is not productive. And also, spin off on that is this idea of perfectionism and making mistakes. Mistakes are essential for growth. They're actually a good thing. None of us love to say, "Hey, I made so many mistakes," but that's just literally the reality of growth. Any growth at all, mental, physical, and any skill development is that fumbling part. And humans, we tend to just really wish we could just skip over that, right? So I love to consider perfectionism. So, perfectionism is this idea of achieving something that's really not achievable based on that framework of mistakes are valuable teachers. Um, Excellence, on the other hand, it it's about growth. It's about the process rather than the end goal, right? So, what's driving our actions in this process? Are we aiming only to have a seamless, perfect, progression? That's never going to happen, never. And in that growth period, that time of growing, what if we could take those uncomfortable emotions? And I've been using the word and the idea alchemizing because everything is energy, and take those and they become like essential parts of the process, even though we don't like how they feel, which is just human. It's just human. I'd like to cover criticism. We have our inner critic. How do we handle criticism? How do we remain subjective? So there isn't a one size fits all, because some of us have, various levels of, I'll put it this way, thicker skin, less thick skin, more sensitive. Some of us are naturally more shy. So criticism is going to hit harder than those that, just don't care as much, right? So there's always a sliding scale on this topic and within this topic. I'd love to cover vulnerability. Vulnerability is something that I keep coming back to, even in my own life. And vulnerability is tied to openness, it's tied to being available for criticism. Vulnerability is essential for growth. It's tied to authenticity. And most of us realize that the folks that we enjoy hanging out with are authentic. There's an energy around them that might even feel safe just because they are authentic. So vulnerability is this openness to growth and those uncomfortable stages of growth. And I picture like a key, and the key is courage. And courage does not mean there is no fear. Courage is this key where we show up in the middle of all of those feelings. And how can we, through emotional intelligence, recognize that these feelings are uncomfortable, that some of them don't feel good, but that, hey, it's a human experience that many of us share. And also, many of the people that we admire because of how they handled these uncomfortable emotions. And they came back with openness and authenticity. And they took, quote, failure and mistakes, and they alchemized that energy. And so success becomes a completely different definition. I'd love to cover strategies for overwhelm, resistance, and procrastination, where they come from. And a closing quote, Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear when you can look at your own heart, embrace the journey." skill mastery with its ups and downs.